We are about to continue now with a weighted panel discussion, developing integrated lifelong guidance policy in Europe. But before that, with a few words, what is awaiting for us after the panel? Right after the panel, we will celebrate Euroguidance 25th birthday with Mika, LAUNIKARI. Then we will have a family photo. Family photo after that, and then we're going to lunch. And after lunch, we will be dividing into parallel sessions in the palace. And about that, I will talk a little bit more later. Panel lasts for 60 minutes, and you can write your questions to Workshop, or there is also this question microphone ball. So if you want to ask live questions from the audience, then Yoko will tell you when is the right time to do that. So please, let's greet our panelists and Yoko.
Hello. So you were very optimistic, I think, actually, to not be late with the lunch. We will try to not make you angry. We don't want you to miss the lunch, so we will try to actually do it in half an hour, because I think it's important that we don't take away time from the sessions where you will be doing the main work. So it's my pleasure to introduce our dear panelists. Mr. William O'Keefe, to my very left, is a colleague of Ms. Crabb, who you heard speaking earlier from the Directorate of Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion in the European Commission. And he's a policy officer, and William has also been the policy contact for the Euroguidance network for the past 2 years, and is also responsible for Commission work on services and tools to support the understanding of skills and qualifications in Europe, and is also a seconded national expert from Irish Department of Education and Skills, where he has worked on international education, recognition of qualifications and validation topics. Yes. And next we have an Estonian guest, Mr. Margus TÖNISSAAR, who is the head of this agency for lifelong guidance in the foundation Innove, who is our organizer today. And the agency consists of these so-called Rajaleidja Pathfinder centers that do exist in 15 counties that also Mr. Leidmets was talking about. And they provide career consultation services for students, study counseling for parents, teachers, and support for study counseling specialists also in schools and also kindergartens. And then we have, I think you all know, Mr. Pedro Moreno da Fonseca from Cedefop, who is the lifelong guidance expert. Previous to Cedefop, he has helped develop the EU European policy networks in the fields of employment and guidance. Also developed and managed research in lifelong guidance systems, educational transitions, technological innovation, and organizational learning. Next we have Ms. Susanne KRAATZ, is the second national expert at the European Parliament, analytical support for the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, observer at the ELGPN Policy Officer at the European Commission, Directorate General for Employment, responsible for the European Commission's Mutual Learning Programme for Public Employment Services, PS to PS dialogue. Yes. And finally, we have Mr. Mika, LAUNIKARI, who is an international mobility and lifelong guidance expert in the Finnish National Agency for Education. Mr. LAUNIKARI has been working in the field of lifelong guidance since 1995, currently at the Finnish National Agency for Education. And his duties include internalization of guidance and counseling services. He has been involved in international guidance cooperation, both policy, research, practice, training and consultancy with the European Union institutions and European networks. So very distinguished guests and panelists. So basically we will focus in the panel about the main challenges for member states when it comes to developing integrated lifelong guidance policy in Europe. And I would start like this. If you had to elect 3 fundamental challenges for the creation of integrated holistic lifelong guidance services, which ones would those be? Would you care to start, Mr. Fonseca? Yes.
So this idea, this very cherished idea of integration across services is an idea that now we are striving to make a reality. Essentially, this consists of change and a sort of innovation to which there is also some sort of resistance to, let's say, to move in new directions. So I would essentially focus on 3 points. One is to achieve a shared vision across services. What you have at the moment is an almost commodification of the clients, the users of the services. So in one service, the person is a student. In the other service, the person is an unemployed. In the other service, the person is at risk. So in a way, you need to create an integrated vision. The person is always a person. It's a human being. It's a citizen. So you need this integration and integrated and shared vision and sort of a common plan, common perspective. This is, let's say, one difficulty, especially when we consider that we do not only have publicly based services, but also services which exist in distinct contexts, like enterprises, yeah, for example. Now, second point, generation of common codes and compatible tools. So what springs to mind immediately is how you can use portfolio tools to link distinct codes which exist in distinct public services, distinct in enterprises, in third sector initiatives, and how you need, both at national and likely at European level, to have a clearinghouse for all this information, probably ICT support to drive this through. So this is another big point. Another third point is that there needs to be also an understanding of common gains and of complementarities between services. So this means in a way that let's say, you need a shared responsibility and a shared perception of the gains of the services, of guidance services. But of course, this requires a bit of development of the current evidence about the outcomes of guidance, but also requires to have a sort of understanding of the continuum of the services. What does one service deliver to the next one? What can the next one take from the previous one? Which parts of information? So, and how can services coordinate better to assist the mission of the other service, which can provide support in a distinct situation in a distinct stage of life. And I will stop now because we have little time.
You passed the micro already to me. As I'm working as a seconded national expert, by the way, I have been seconded by the University of the Public Employment Service Germany, where I develop bachelor courses for specialists for labor market integration and career guidance counselors. And in the first part, as I'm now working for the Parliament, I would like to bring to your attention what the Parliament says in resolutions about guidance. And in the second part, to answer your question as regard, and that is then a different head. That is the head as I'm working in an analytical department for the Employment and Social Affairs Committee. Is then my analyst insight and my personal view, and I'm to be blamed for everything I say in that role, to make this clear. So first, as I put together in some briefing notes for the two committees, Employment and Social Affairs Committee and Culture and Education Committee, the developments in European lifelong guidance policies, I was quite pleased to see. I analyzed the resolutions for this, the Parliament resolutions, yes, and I would like to quote some parts. from 3 skills-related resolutions adopted between 2015 and 2017, the last one on the new skills agenda. The European Parliament stresses the need to strive for a more flexible, individual and personalized approach to career development and lifelong education and training across one's personal career and development path. It recognizes the role that both public and private stakeholders can play in providing this. And it recognizes that guidance and counseling, which address individual needs and preferences, must be a core element of education and skills policies from an early stage. I think that is important to know, that there is a clear message that this should start soon. Second, guidance should be anchored in the curriculum and must be provided in cooperation with economic actors and employment agencies. So much we heard here about cooperation and formal establishment has been called upon by the Parliament. And it also recalls that lifelong guidance on professional career development should be available over the whole working life to maintain and develop one's skills and knowledge. I think what Raimo, what the others have said on lifelong guidance, what the Council resolutions say, this is all an aspect the Parliament wants to develop all over Europe. And a last point, it calls on the Commission and the Member States to develop high quality and targeted career guidance. So to do further steps, we have got interesting information from the Commission on further more practice-oriented support. I think it will be important for the future also to see in combination with the CareersNet that has been launched yesterday, how policies and systems development will be promoted. Because practitioners alone might not be enough to comply with the Parliament resolutions to bring a general policy development forward. Now, where I see the main challenges, I would like to go one step back. It also relates to the understanding. James, you said career guidance counselors have to better train people in terms of skills for jobs and employability. And I think we have to create an understanding, and I'm currently preparing a briefing note for the committees on career management skills and careers education, therefore I read a lot. And we have to get a better policy understanding, that we do not only need skills for jobs, but also, as Raimo said, better skills, generic skills, how to manage transitions. And as you said from the Estonian Ministry in the morning, guidance cannot do miracles. It's not a miracle cure, but it can do maybe miracles as regards prevention. So what do young people learn when they learn career management skills? I think they have a personal project they implement, how to take an educational and employment occupational decision and how to implement this. So they learn projects starting from information collection, structuring information, prioritizing. They learn decision making and implement these steps. And on this personal project, I have tried to do it a bit with my sons and sent them to different services. Yes, as they were unfortunately not totally determined what to study, so it was a lot of work. And step by step on this personal projects, they get a set of skills, career management skills or career competencies they can apply in the work context and in other situations. And my feeling is there is not yet a clear policy understanding. My second point, and this is a challenge, yeah? A second challenge is to get a better evidence base, I would say. I think ELGBN has done a good job because when preparing for this analysis, I found when you look at the research, you can start in school, you can go further to vocational education and training, to higher universities. to public employment services, working with unemployed or preventing unemployment. When you collect systematically research, you find already good pieces of evidence that developing career education and career management skills works. But it is not enough. And that leads to my third overarching challenge maybe for all. And maybe the reason is that there is not yet enough understanding that this will be career development skills will be a key competence for the future for all citizens given changing labor markets. It's a lack of investments. Because even if we can offer more online portals, but development costs there are high development costs, and for small organizations, they are difficult to take sometimes because the development costs are nearly the same. They are much easier to take for larger organizations than for small organizations. And we also need, as I know from training career guidance specialists, we need a good caseload, and one session might not be enough. And it might have to be continued when students are at the university, when young people are in vocational education and training. Because what we know, I did other studies for the parliament, the dropout rate, and you also mentioned this problem, and Estonia is not the only country. When we look at European figures, we have between 15 and 50% dropout rate from WET. For example, we have not very good figures yet, but the Commission is now working on tracking university graduates, so we are going to get better figures. But also there, we have a lot of dropout. Dropout can happen, but more could be done for prevention and also afterwards for curing, because I would say a certain dropout rate is normal, but people need good support then to do the next step. This is all at the moment. I hand over to Mika.
To William, maybe. I think.
William?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Good morning. Thank you to Margus and the presidency for the invitation to take part, and thank you for the question. When it comes to challenges, I think my first one is one that the Euroguidance colleagues in particular will be sick of hearing me talk about, but it's this idea of impact and influence. And it's a challenge, and then it can impact on the presence and the identity of lifelong guidance and guidance activities. Guidance occurs at system level, at group level, individual level. It can be embedded within policy, occur in lots of different contexts, can support personal development, learning development, career management services. And across that cross-section, ways of identifying it, demonstrating it to political hierarchies, policymakers, and people like that can be difficult. As we saw earlier in the day, people like numbers, people like data, people like survey results, and it's not always necessarily easy to capture the influences of the influence and impact of guidance activities in the eventual outcomes. So certainly that's an impact, or a challenge. Second is something that Alison referred to in her opening presentation, a challenge, but a challenge I believe has a flip side, is the diversity of contexts in which guidance occurs. Now, I do think this is a necessity. It's the nature of our education and training and employment systems that guidance is delivered in this diversity of contexts, and it increasingly needs to be. But of course, this creates challenges of their own, because people need to increasingly get political buy-in, support, financing, the ability to scale up projects and disseminate them, and it needs to occur on individualized, case-by-case basis on specific projects, specific activities within specific sectors, dealing with different cross-sections. No, I do think this is a strength of guidance, and it's a demonstration of the way it's active across so many areas of lifelong learning, and a demonstration of the fact that lifelong learning occurs in lots of different contexts, but it's still a reality that we need to talk about when we talk about lifelong guidance. And a third one is relevance. It's a topic that I think is very important today in the context of talking about ICT LMI. I'm from an education and training background, and these are new topics for me, and I'm sure for lots of the guidance professionals in the room to be beginning conversations about how we can use big data to produce intelligible guidance for individuals is a new task. I've been reading about HR practices that are used in some companies in the last few weeks, and in one company, an individual, all staff are asked 3 times a year to email their colleagues, their management, colleagues at the same grade and at lower grades, to get personal feedback on their experiences of working with them and ways they can improve. And then in another company, while you're in a team meeting, everyone has a screen in front of them, and as someone is giving feedback or speaking or giving a contribution, you're pressing a screen to rate your reaction to the individual and the contribution that they're making. So these 2 types of activities feed into your overall evaluation, your performance evaluation at the end of the year. And I'm just thinking to myself, are our graduates, are our job seekers ready for this type of work environment and the complexity of that essentially all day, every day, they're responsible as individuals for their performance, their interaction with individuals, and they're getting instant and immediate feedback. So I think it's a challenge, a real challenge, to get people ready for this. This is the future of work that Alison referenced in the opening presentation, and this is the reality. Of course, this could be within the labour market that we're always trying to catch up with, and maybe they'll have new practices tomorrow. And then guidance is something that's important to me, and when we talk about the idea of its relevance and the need to keep up, is for the low-skilled people, the people who are maybe that we get forgotten about, don't get talked about when we talk about innovation and the future of work. People like adult learners, while the European economy may be improving, there's still real issues about people who fell out of the labour force effectively during the crash, and the sectors and industries they worked in just aren't active anymore, and they hadn't experienced lifelong learning, they hadn't been upskilling. So now we have adults who are trying to re-engage and get back into the labour force, and guidance services, as well as all elements of education, training and employment, need to respond to this. So this issue of relevance and the fact that we need to keep developing as the world around us needs to keep developing, I think is also another key challenge for lifelong guidance.
Maybe you want to say? No, go ahead. People can turn their heads and make a little exercise. Okay, I'll try. So many have been said already. We are somehow in a strange situation that we are proud of our PISA tests, but at the same time we are talking about that our people don't have enough certain type of skills. You can call them 21st century skills, but probably the thing is that the PISA tests, they don't measure social skills, they don't measure career skills and other 12 more skills that we have in our curriculum of general education. So we don't actually know very well how well we are doing. We know that our employment market, we are not very satisfied about the results. We also see a lot of dropouts and other problems, so something is going on in the school. We have great policymakers. We have, I think, great curriculum. We have a lot of very good methodological materials. But at the end of the day, teacher decides what kind of material he or she uses, also parents. So I start to think that the best way to change the situation is start to make teaching material. That's the next thing what we should start to do since tomorrow. It's enough of the policies and materials and methodology. We have them all. The next is it's also will solve somehow a couple of other problems we have. It's overload of information. We don't have problems with the lack of information. We have problem how to find a particular part of information. So through the learning material and teaching material, we can solve this for the children, for the students. And the self-help. It's strange to watch how still teacher performing lessons and students are listening to them. Somebody less, somebody more. But tonight I have to start to learn with my child again because something she didn't learn in the school again. I don't know what she's doing there, but I'm the one who will teach it at the end. So if you have your tool where you can learn all the stuff, the computer is your teacher. At least what is at least regarding the knowledge. And after that, teachers can more concentrate toward the other skills, how we work in the groups, how we communicate with each other, and etc. And regarding guidance, we are facing the problem with the lack of specialists. I think many other countries do as well. So we don't develop ICT solutions just because it's fun and very cool. We are doing it because we don't have any other solutions left. We have still people in rural areas. Still we have somebody living in islands, and they don't have easy solution to go to the local center and have those services they need. So this is the only solution what we can do, and also these self-help solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a little sidekick, if you allow me, Mika, before your answer. I want to continue here from Mr. TÖNISSAAR's with a concrete example, which you will see also tomorrow. Of I think this very much starts from the child, the actual person, about self-analysis, and we have developed this kind of tool like the minutes of silence. It's basically about turning your focus inward and also clearing your head for a minute. So we have actually taught 1 in 1,000, every 1,000th Estonian knows how to carry out a lesson of or a session of this minutes of silence for the children, both in schools, in kindergartens. And actually tomorrow morning, if we are lucky, we will be having our session, because I think really this is a very hands-on thing that you can do. And it also teaches the children from the very beginning that they are the bosses of their life. So also now, as a next step, we are also doing this as an app. And hopefully we will show you a picture tomorrow. But
yes, one more thing.
Okay.
You already kicked it off. And one more terrible disease we have is a project disease. Everything, if you need some kind of solution, we have a project again. It has a beginning and the end. If you have a too high level of bullying, we have a project for that. If we want to develop entrepreneurship skills, we have projects for that. Why don't we have it in the system, in the essential teaching system already? We somehow have to get rid of these projects.
Okay, Mika, now it is your turn before we go into... Yes, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, hello everybody. We've heard some words of wisdom here, and I fully agree what the previous speakers have said. And at the same time, I feel my mind is empty. There is very little to add to what has been said. But there is one question that is somehow troubling my mind today. And that is, okay, we are the European guidance community here, representing policy, research, training, practice, and even more. And the big question in my mind is, who is your employer? Is it clear to you? It's not the employing organization. It is definitely the client, the individual client, with his or her needs, information, learning needs, etc. And this we tend to forget somehow. I mean, I've been hearing this morning, yes, talking about learners, individuals, citizens, students, pupils, etc. Yes, even migrants or immigrants. But the way we discuss about them, it's very much about grouping them, the low-skilled, the disabled, and so forth. And this is very risky in this field where we are working. We should really treat everybody as an individual, and the starting point should always be what is his or her needs. And this is a tremendous challenge, especially now that we are also focusing on technology and how we should be using ICT in providing guidance and counseling services. How can we possibly know what are the needs of the individual citizens, whether young or older? So this is definitely something we should consider even more. The needs of the clients, that's really the key. And also, Pedro, you mentioned about having a vision. Indeed, I agree. But for having a vision, we really should know what kind of a clientele we have, what they need today, what they might be needing tomorrow. And also, William, you said about impact and influence. How can we possibly measure impact if we are not clear about the needs that the clients have? Or what are the competencies that guidance practitioners should have for helping these individual citizens? So that was definitely one challenge for all of us. And then very many words beginning with the letter C are going around in my mind, and they have been repeatedly mentioned here during the morning session. Cooperation, coordination, common goals, cross-sectoral cooperation, and compatibility, and various things. They are all important. About coordination, I would like to add the prefix one more time to this word, co-coordination, because if we use the word coordination, at least in my mind, it implies that there is one body, one institutional body, or one ministry, or one thing coordinating things, but we are living in a networked world, and it's a global world for us all in the field of guidance these days. So it's really about networking and co-coordination, and on top of that, of course, cooperation, exchange of information, practices, knowledge sharing, all the things we are already doing, and this event is a good example about these good things. And then coherence, that was Raimo Vuorinen in his presentation mentioning, and yes, definitely coherence in our field is definitely a goal, and I'm just wondering if there is somehow a mechanism at the European level that could be established for the future. I mean, we know about all the good work that has been mentioned here already today. There have been different networks, there are different networks, there have been different lifelong guidance expert groups, and different European agencies are really doing a lot for making guidance a reality. But I'm just wondering, it's already 9 years ago when we had the previous guidance resolution, EU guidance resolution. I wouldn't mind having a new one where the focus would be more on the things we are discussing here today. Maybe that would be a good guideline for us all in the member states. Of course, this might be wishful thinking. It's a big step to convince the national authorities, the European Commission, and other actors that we need a new guidance resolution eventually. I'm just proposing that this could be a way to go, and that would also bring us even more closely together, because I really think we need continuity. That's, again, a word beginning with the letter C. So, okay, this is all what I wanted to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You almost already answered my second question, and the answers now need to be very short. Namely, you mentioned one possible solution, what actions to take for guidance to make a difference, because as we heard, Ms. Crabb said that when the Eurobarometer measured it, only 1/4 has actually used guidance services. So if every one of you very shortly would just outline one thing that you would choose to make a difference.
So this is one thing composed of three. I hope this is not cheating. But so I just would like to deepen one point which has been raised several times, which is putting guidance into context. So James talked about that. Then it was mentioned also by Raimo. So I just want to put a bit more meat into those bones that, and to launch some ideas for the reflection in the workshops. So essentially, I can think of three central contexts of, in terms of guidance. One is the schools. So what means, because it was said, oh no, guidance is already in the schools. I'm not so sure. It was said just now, maybe it isn't in the way we think. So we need more cooperation between academic departments and between, let's say, the career guidance and counseling departments. We need more intertwining between curricular aspects and aspects of career development. And I'm going to actually cite literature because I think there's a lot of research done on this and needs to be taken up. So, for example, Bill Law's work should be taken up to help structure this, ideas about this. Then we also have the enterprise context. So we need to have more guidance practice intertwined with human resources practice. We have staff development policies, we have age management policies, we have talent management policies and enterprise, and these could all benefit immensely from the integration of guidance activities and tools in a closer manner. So this should be also part of development strategies at national level, both, let's say, labor market policy and economic policy, because this is directly related to growth and to balanced growth. And just and for example, mentioning again literature, Wendy Hirsch is making doing very good work on this level, so it's something to be taken up. You have then the community setting, in which you have all, as people were talking about, this people which are out of the reach of standard services. You have a lot of people which have been heavily affected by the crisis and are undergoing heavy spells, long spells of unemployment, are suffering skills decay, have psychological difficulties in re-engaging in work environment. So it's all complex. So guidance needs to be able to step out of the office, go into the communities, get into peer groups, engage the peer groups, have strategies that are linked to community development, to community life, to local associations, to third sector organizations, and can intertwine its methods, its strategies into those parallel strategies. And we have, for example, Ria Thompson's work on this level, and she's here, so she should contribute to the outreach session. Just to get, try to bring things to the ground and what, actually has to be done.
Yes, thank you very much. I found it quite inspiring to bring back the client, really. Yes, as I focus normally on the policy perspective, this is now my job, but having the client in mind. So what are the client's needs? So, I always have, for example, a young person not knowing what to do, or an unemployed, frustrated, or someone frustrated in a job. I don't want to do my job any longer. But what can we make in happen? What can we do in terms of policies to help them? One point on clients, when I'm speaking about career management skills, and we do all to enable the clients, and I'm listening with attention, and I agree that we should promote self-responsibility of citizens and make them active. But I would like to mention it is also important to have structural constraints in mind, because when labor markets are getting more flexible, or when jobs are getting more precarious, then career guidance can only partially help with transitions, but not with the quality of work as such. Or when the quality of education is not good and the system is strongly segmenting, then guidance can maybe compensate a bit, but this is not the original problem. just to I found it important to say that we should not over-responsibilize. Oh, you know what I mean, yeah? The client. I was struck by the Cs. I tried to bring in the next points with the Cs, yeah? You mentioned a very good point, it's project disease. I totally agree. I like projects. Projects are good. Projects can bring in new ideas and new things. But sometimes what I'm missing is another word with C, and probably you mentioned it, continuity. And that leads to sustainability. And there I learned a lot. Wolfgang Müller is here from the Network of Public Employment Services, and this network has a very good initiative. It is called bench learning. They are collecting quantitative indicators and qualitative performance indicators that cannot be totally transferred to career guidance. Yes, it's also linked with evidence base. But that showed me, and this is my point, how long it takes to make things happen. So it took, I think, more than 10 years until member states could agree on how to collect and compare data on impact. Yeah, for example, even if you have administrative data on labor market integration. And I would like to bring this really, and I see with pleasure Alice nodding, because this is an argument at European level. You need a long haul. So if setting up a project, it can take a decade or more until member states can make this happen. And it needs also a strong input from the European side and commitment. And the same holds true, that is my experience, at the level of member states. And then last point on cooperation. You rightly mentioned that it is an important skill or competence for practitioners, Mika, this networking. But I think it is also important to have, there I bring it back in the end to the policy level, as we have often very fragmented guidance landscapes. You know this. In all your countries, there are hardly any countries in Europe. Maybe Scotland has now a lifelong career guidance center. But all the others, you have so different combinations. You have teachers in schools, you have guidance with teachers, you have sometimes public employment services working with schools. In others, these are career guidance centers or youth centers. And then you have different actors for adult education and so on. And I think it is indeed important. It was a success that many member states created national guidance fora to bring the actors together, and I participated at several meetings. And you know what made me listen carefully is that actors said, it's the first time that we are sitting together. Oh, you are doing this and that, and yeah, we could use your tool. And I think this is a call for member states, but could be, I do not know how, but this is not my task, could be supported maybe from at the European level to go further with these national guidance fora, because that would allow to go forward with many other challenges having been identified here.
We have our own microphone.
Sorry.
Just for my comment, I'm going back to the question, this term integrated lifelong guidance, and do we want lifelong guidance to be integrated itself, or do we want lifelong guidance to be integrated in the worlds of education, training and employment? So I would just say the thing I would like to see is that the guidance sector, the lifelong guidance sector, makes some noise. Get engaged and get involved, visit the DG Employment website and the Commission website and see the things that Alison was referring to earlier, the projects, the Upskilling Pathways Initiative, which the work is beginning on now at national level. Highlight your role, the potential of your role and your contribution in implementing initiatives like this, as well as the panoply and the range of activities, policy activities going on at national level and initiated by your governments and stakeholders and actors. Respond to consultations, participate in the studies, apply for EU activities. This is the way in which lifelong guidance becomes integrated in this larger world. It's how you demonstrate the relevance and the expertise. When you are the connecting piece to the client, to the individual, you know how to process information, meet their needs, offered the tailored service, the services in context that they need. So then we need to get guidance into this larger world of education, training and employment so that your expertise is clear in there. I know it's a big, broad statement and that there's lots of national context and things like that, but this kind of strategic, targeted focus and doing some PR for lifelong guidance in a broader setting, I really do see that that's an important thing to consider in the future.
Okay. First, I agree with Warren, and again, as everybody's mentioned already, that the data are very important and the feedback, how we are doing, is very important. That's how we can improve our services all the time. In Estonian-wise, we in Pathfinder centers, we provide career services for students, but it's integrated with study counseling services for teachers, parents and other study counselors in the schools and kindergartens. In many countries, they have defined career competency as the main competency, as the roof competency of other competencies. And this means that if we would take a step further, we could use the competency we have in our Pathfinder centers to provide total and better support for schools and kindergartens. So, because they are most important institutions in order to teach those competencies for the children. And they do this very good cooperation with parents.
Yes, thank you everyone. But I would like to conclude. I would like to give with you one thought. In the Estonian schools, again, coming back to the single person and his or her development, we are moving more and more towards trying to evaluate skills and not just giving grades, because at the moment in many countries we still do give grades in subjects which are maths or Finnish language or something else, but maybe in the future CVs I see even now more and more we don't anymore say where we worked, but we actually state what we are good at. So maybe as an idea to think about also in the discussions in the actual school system, in the curricula, should we even manage or grade these kind of curriculums, or should we actually focus more on the skills? But thank you everyone, and now you will actually go to the hard work. But before the hard work we have a little bit of practical information and a little bit of party also. So Aigi, please.
Thank you.